everyone, it's Sherry Carroll here with Hero Arts to show you how to make a snowman card with non-holiday stamps. For my snowman, I used the Many Dots clear set, and for the Christmas trees, I've used banners from the Studio Calico stamp set. And once all my pieces were stamped, colored, and cut out, I created a floating window card. To start the process, I've put my Many Dots onto my stamp press, and I'm inking them up with Versamark ink. Since a couple of these are rather solid images, I want to get really good inking, so I go over a couple times. Now I'm using my anti-static bag or embossing buddy to coat my paper. It gives it fine powder so the embossing powder doesn't stick where you don't want it. And now I'm pressing my dots onto my paper and giving it really good pressure to make sure I get those really solid images pressed in really well. And once I have everything stamped, I can go ahead and cover the images with white embossing powder, and this is I'm using a Hero Arts white embossing powder, and I just like to sprinkle that over, and I use a piece of paper underneath me to catch all the excess powder. Tap the back off and just set that aside, and now I can just use my heat gun and heat set it. Next, I've put my banners onto an acrylic block, and I'm coating my paper again with my embossing buddy so that the embossing powder doesn't stick. And using my Versamark ink, I'll go ahead and ink up my banners. And once I have those well inked, I'll go ahead and stamp these onto white cardstock, and this is Hero Arts Snow cardstock, and just give those a good press. And again, I'll use my paper underneath me and my Hero Arts white embossing powder. Just sprinkle this on, tap off the excess, and heat set my trees. Now I want to add color to my trees by using peeled paint, distress ink, and shabby shutters, and I have my little Tsukaneko dauber here. It's a little sponge dauber, and it just kind of goes on your finger. And I'm just dipping into the ink and spreading it onto my tree, and I get my resist image. I've created a little hat here just by tracing on paper, and I've kind of sized up the head of the snowman. And now I want to color this with walnut stain ink, but first I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back just to press it onto my paper so it stays in place. And with another little sponge dauber, I'm going to go ahead and just spread some walnut stain on the hat until I get the whole thing covered. And for the window portion of my card, I'm going to stamp my greeting, and what I'm put on my stamp press here is the letters for peace, and this is a piece of acetate that I've already cut out, which fits across the card. It's 4 1/4 by 2 inches. Now I'm just pressing my letters into my StazOn pad, just giving a gentle little press a couple times, make sure they're well covered. And with the stamp press, I can line up my letters by using the grid pattern. And once I have everything lined up where I want it, just go ahead and press in place. And then release and peel the acetate away. And you get a perfect stamping every time. To create the window card, I've cut a sheet of 8 1/2 by 11 cardstock in half to get a 4 1/4 by 11, and then I scored it at 5 1/2 inches, and then cut away 1 inch, which is where my window will go in, and replace that space. So to start the construction, I'll add adhesive to the front of the card, and make sure that it's all up from the edges. I kind of went overboard there. And then you just lay your acetate on, and it's about 1/4 inch, and press that in place. Next, I'll add adhesive to the bottom portion of the card. It's actually the top of the bottom portion of the card, and I'll line that up to the bottom, and then I'll press the flap down, and now the acetate sits on top of the paper. So next I've cut panels of paper from our Pool Designer papers, and I'm just adding adhesive to the back, and I'll place these on top to secure the acetate in place. Once the top portion's done, you can go ahead and add the bottom portion. And this is just a strip, so I'm just adding adhesive to the bottom of my card. I'll put this panel in place, just making sure I have everything lined up. So now just about an inch of the acetate shows through. So press that in place and trim off the excess from the back. So now that I have my card constructed, I've used some circle punches and punched out the pieces and parts of my snowman, and I've created some arms with some craft paper and used little gemstones for his buttons. So I've put adhesive on the back, and now I just have to press these pieces in place. For the snowman face, I cut a little carrot nose out of paper, and I used gemstones for his eyes and little dots for his little mouth. I just love how all the little patterns are different. We have dots, stripes, and plaid. And the last thing I need to do is add his hat, and I added a little green strip and a pearl at the top. For the trunks of the trees, I just cut some strips of craft paper, and I colored those a little bit with walnut stain so that they're a bit darker. And then I've cut out my trees and added some gemstones, and I just have to put these in place. And then I foam dotted the one tree up a little bit so it sits above. Just press that in place. And I've also torn some white paper, a couple layers, and added some rock candy stickles. And I've already added adhesive and just have to press this in place. I've decided I want to move this tree over a little bit, so luckily I've used repositional tape runner, so I can just scoot this over and go ahead and reattach. So my card's almost done. All I have to do is add a little ribbon to the bottom. And here's another peek at the detail of the snowman with his little cutout arms and all the gems and pearls and nose and little dots for his smile. And to finish the card, I've added a nice creamy chocolate bow to the bottom. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and please visit us at www.heroarts.com for more inspiration and ideas. Thanks for watching.